Okay. Awesome to have everyone here. We are here actually to have one of the first session of this kind of AI agent thought leadership slash kind of like deep dive, and we're super excited to have you, James, here on board. So basically, giving a little bit context. So we're co-modding like with Alex here, and we're super excited to bring you this session because I think we spreading more and more awareness around agents. What is happening? What are the challenges? How the space is moving forward? But without kind of further ado, let's do a quick round of intro. Alex, you wanna start?
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm definitely not the thought leader here, but James is, and I'm just the eye candy. I'm excited to talk to James.
Hey, Alex. Yes. Thanks for that. James Young. I lead a project called Collab.Land, and we've been doing bots on Discord and Telegram for about 5 years now in production on just doing what's called token gating. So you want to get into a community that's token gating and getting into specific Discord or Telegram channels. We have a bot that makes sure and verifies the assets in your wallet so that we have uh, common stakeholders or asset holders just chatting with each other. Glad to be here.
Nice. Super excited to have you here, James and Alex. And yeah, I'm Francesco. I'm leading developer relation team at Consensys, and I'm super excited about everything kind of like permission, especially with the MetaMask delegation toolkit. And yeah, so let's get it started, right? And I think, I started kind of like learning about agents when I built this kind of like frameworks around who are the stakeholder, how many launchpad are out there, how many frameworks we're building, example Eliza, for example. Uh, and feel free kind of like to also ask question, Alex. But I want to ask you, like James, like so, what's your experience? How the things kind of like started with agents specifically? Because I remember, the time that people are using like bots for everything, like from the day to day Telegram collaboration, right? But how is kind of like the story that because you've been since the start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think when ChatGPT first came out, I think this might have been in 23, right? 2023. And there was all this interest and intrigue, but there was like the two strawberries problem. It couldn't do math. There were a lot of things that were glaringly obvious that things didn't work. And then you had all of these Web 2 startups getting funded, and that kind of mini bubble existed because they just said they were just, you know, ChatGPT wrappers. And so the hype kind of went up and kind of blew over. And I think a lot of people still think of AI in that era of 2023. But what really caught my eye, and I was doing weekly research kind of workshops. Some of them was streamed on YouTube, so I was tracking it. But really, what caught my eye and what really kind of was the light bulb moment for me is when I discovered Cursor. And Copilot was great, and I think it allows for developers to be really productive. But it was really Cursor that turned on the light bulb for me, because I was able to just ask the chat questions. It would be able to get it wrong, but I was able to refine it, maybe 2 or 3 rounds. I learned how to not get Cursor into a loop where it would solve a problem, introduce a new bug, and then solve that bug, but introduce the original bug. So once I kind of understood the approach of Cursor and how to use it, I was sold. And then after that, Windsurf came out, and that like Cursor 10x my productivity, and then Windsurf again 10x that. So that was kind of the backdrop where I got a preview or a glimpse into what was going on, and was following on crypto Twitter, just all of the rise of these agents. And it was extremely credible to me because I experienced it as a developer, using Cursor. So for everyone in the audience that may be skeptical, rightly so, be skeptical. But the update in terms of your priors, I think, is needs to be adjusted. So it's not 2023 AI, and it's 2024 AI, and at least for me. And this is where the space then, when you take a step back, is moving really fast. So the incremental updates from 2023 to 2024, and then all the other things that I was looking at in terms of, you have that one famous Will Smith spaghetti video at the beginning, and it just looks like abstract AI art to now. That I think was around the same kind of period where you can just see the exponential improvement of AI. And so, being in tech
And
for over 25 years, I was like, this is something we have to pay attention to.
what I think is one of the most interesting things about this, James, is you told me these stories before, is how not just agents, but like how these changes in technology have altered your work patterns and the work patterns of people that you work with. Like you mentioned someone at Collab.Land who was a community manager who started using Cursor or Windsurf, and they took like a landing page or a homepage for Collab.Land and rebuilt it in a week. And they went from not understanding technology to now they're actually communicating with Cursor and they're able to like interact with it in a different way. And you, even though you're technical, right? Like you studied CS or like you studied CS in college at Berkeley or whatever, and it had been a while since you were doing technology again. And it seems like you, like many other kind of technical founders, have found the love for technology again and are back in the trenches.
Yeah, yeah. Real quick context. Collab.Land was actually born from a no-code platform, and it was a reference implementation. The bot was a reference implementation of what you could do with a no-code platform. So I studied no-code platforms for a while. The problem with a no-code platform is that you have to learn and understand the constraints of that no-code platform. It's always a subset of what you can do if you were a programmer. And so when I saw a community manager, as Alex had mentioned, using Cursor, they first used V0. They have no coding experience and outgrew V0 because it was the design of the page was already there. So they took that into Cursor, and they were refining things, putting animations. And I know just from my context, this would take weeks for a semi-experienced programmer to do. And this person was doing it just not knowing how to code. A week later, they weren't chatting with the AI. I saw them fix code in the IDE. And then for me, I was like, the AI workflow is the ultimate no code experience because you get the best of both worlds. The ability not to code, but then to kind of go at your own pace in a very practical way, and then just start coding. And so it just was natural to them. And so it was really amazing to see. And that also was kind of a light bulb moment for me. And we use AI in our workflows at Collab.Land because we're a small team. But people don't know we're basically the largest DApp because we're on over 30 chains. So
That's interesting.
yeah, we really lean into the AI. I forgot your second point or your second question, Alex.
Yeah, so I kind of want to get into more about Collab.Land and how you guys use AI workflows, but the second part to me is what's interesting is how AI is changing your life and changing your team, right? Because you're using it in multiple ways. But even for you specifically, you had made a comment to me previously that you kind of got out of being in the trenches. You're no longer in development as much, and
That's right.
now with Cursor and Windsurf, like you're in the trenches all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll tell another little story. The reason why I really saw the power of computers is that I was like in fourth grade. So this was like in the 80s. That's how old I am. And I used to talk a lot in class. And so there was this the teacher was like, you're talking too much. You have to write these standards, 500 lines. I will not be a blabbermouth in class. And so my dad had just bought me a computer. I'm in 4th grade. And so I wrote a little in BASIC, 10, I will not be a blabbermouth in class. 20, go to 10. It was not even a loop. And I was just like, that was it. And I said, print. And I just counted the lines and I turned it in. And then my teacher was like, did you type all of this? And then back of my head, I was like, yeah. So I was like, I kind of typed all of this. And so I said, yes. And then so I was like, oh my gosh, this is the power of computers. Because no one had a personal computer back then. And so I got into computers and automation. And, I was there for the first kind of .com bubble. I was there with like the rise of social media. I was there and saw and was nerd sniped by the world computer and Web3. And so, like you said, Alex, I got out of computers and coming back in. And to me right now, just the enablement, just talking about that other story as well, where we had a community manager that had no coding experience, being able to launch web pages and learn this within like a week. To me, the excitement of AI is a combination of the joy and just the kind of, I don't know what it is, the feeling of being able to build something when I was in 4th grade, when Web 1, 2, Web 3. I feel all of that kind of coming back and it's just concentrated. That's how excited I am about
Nice.
AI
And
and
I
what
feel,
it can enable.
yeah, it's so fascinating, the story here, James, because, from automatization to actually getting the tools to deliver something could be on a faster and more efficient way. Like, actually, like, I want to touch on what are kind of like the use case and vertical that you see developing more right now. I think, like, obviously, like what you're mentioning around kind of like coding, kind of having more coding tools. But is there any kind of like specific like use case that you see, okay, this is something that is happening? Because right now we're speaking about a lot of social graphs and like agent on the social side and agent on the automatization side. What do you think about kind of like those two verticals, and what kind of vertical you think is moving forward that is faster, obviously?
It's a really good question. I don't know. We're just kind of in the beginning of this transition. So you're asking someone, for example, the analogy is we're used to riding on horses at the moment, right? Doing everything in a manual way. And if you ask someone like that was, riding a horse, that there would be a phone with food delivery
I know,
in
yeah,
100
yeah.
years, it's like you can't. It's hard to like understand the gap. And the thing about it is, right now, if you think things are moving fast with AI, this is the slowest it will ever be. This is just feels like every 6-9 months there's just some like exponential like leveling up of AI. And
This is a good point.
like Stargate was just announced the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who is watching this at what moment in time, but it's just January and kind of end of January 2025. There's going to be like a $500 billion fund. So, there's a lot of capital as well. And with the ability for someone just who has just an interesting idea, they can now just deploy an agent. It feels like to me, kind of like the invention of the printing press, in a way that it's not that like, okay, now everyone can read and write, but like the power dynamic back in like the dark ages or whatever, before the printing press, you had these high priests. They were the ones that could only read and write, and they had to tell the common folk what the will of God was, right? The printing press allowed normal people to now have an education and to read and write. And that turned into enlightenment, the Renaissance, all of that. I think we're kind of at that point where going back
Yes.
to that original story where you had non-developers now being able to program and develop things. It's not the invention of the Gutenberg printing press was not just this mechanical thing where now all these copies of books can be available. It's what it opened up. It was the
Yes.
ability now to do things like, you have this meme last cycle. Can devs do something? Because the devs were the high priests. They're the ones that controlled the
Mm-hmm.
code. They're the ones that controlled how to program, how to do things. But now with AI, we have this ability for just anyone to think of anything that they want and to be able to develop it and to deploy it on the internet. And
Yeah,
so,
this is so
you know,
true.
I think that there's these like huge shifts that are happening now. And when I think about that, I'm like, wait a second. Are we living in the dark ages of the internet? We're living in the online dark ages right now. We don't know it because you have these few companies owning the algorithms and the feeds and, basically what you see and stuff. And I'm like, wait a second, we are about to approach this enlightenment era when you have all these different apps, all these different agents that are going to flourish around the world because everyone now has an internet connection.
This
So
is so true. Yeah.
I think we're going to come into this new era and it's really hard to understand and, to try and like map it to what we know, actually, I think will be limiting. Just like if someone that didn't understand
Yes.
what it meant to have a vehicle, a car, an automobile, like someone that's just on a horse, they had no concept of the impact of the automobile in society, let alone an
So,
airplane, things like that.
so James, just to push back on your take, I
Yeah.
think we can take some learnings on what has happened in previous times where new things have been created, right? If there's going to be new agents and new builders and new things on that are developing, then what will those individuals need to develop? Because there will just be like, for example, there's more new computers, there's going to be a whole lot more like hardware needed or microchips or whatever, right? So what will be needed by all these new people developing and getting into the code? Things like cursor is going to help a lot. Things like verifiable inference, things like who is bullshit, who's good. There will be a lot of things that will be needed because there will be more and more agents being created now.
That's a good question. Like if I were to think about it, I haven't thought about this. This is a really good question. Yeah, I come from the belief that like technology leads culture, right?
Okay.
I think that like, the advent of manufacturing led to the people moving towards cities and being able to work in a factory, actually, I believe, led to kind of the modern day school system, right? So I believe that technology shapes culture. And so I think what we need to do from a technology perspective in order to make this kind of adopted and mainstream is we got to normalize this. And I think there is a kind of at the highest level this like this like cultural norming of like AI can be used to help you. And I think a lot of people get scared by it. A lot of schools, like my children are in school, and there is this kind of pushback against AI because there isn't the tooling to be able to always detect what is something that is written by the student or what's AI. There's debates because I help my son with physics. I'm not I don't know physics that well, and so a lot of the answers we chat GPT, and I taught him how to like chat GPT his math and his physics homework. And now it's like the teachers are like, okay, your tests are take home. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, that might not be the best thing to do because now you can't tell whether or not it is him knowing or if he's just chat GPTing the answers.
It's true.
So there's a transition that's happening right now. And I think we got to normalize AI, and this whole AI accelerate meme, things like that, I think need to be fully embraced. And it's those that know versus those that don't know. They say the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. it's like we got to distribute the knowledge and let people not be afraid and just try this AI. Really, I think a lot of the tooling is there, and what's not there, we can use AI to help build. That's the interesting part about AI, is that it can like improve on itself practically from a workflow. It just needs to be taught it. So it's this kind of meta. And so that's why I think partially you're seeing things accelerate. I don't think you can be here in this stage of AI without AI helping itself in a way. And
100%.
so this is where you're going to get the exponential. So it's just, I think at the highest level is just telling people about it, like trying to empower people about it, because you have this like, you know, dystopian kind of counterpoint here where people don't even want to see it and don't even want to know about it because they want to stop it. So I think it's this kind of just telling people of all the potential and possibilities that can happen, and just keep it open-ended and not be prescribed by like what we already know and replicate it. But I think that's what's going to happen. People are going to go, okay, what can I automate that I'm currently doing? Once we get through that phase, then it's going to be, wait a second, there's all these things that we didn't even think about that we can do.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's going to be the creative phase.
100%. I really like where this conversation is going, and I think we should definitely have a part 2 next week with you, James, because you're such a kind of like a deep book of knowledge. I just want to ask you one last question. Like you touched a little bit. I really like the analogy on the press, right? But do you see right now, is this the right kind of like journey? Because I see more framework coming, more people, like we discuss this a lot, like because we're building now similar to this layer 2 fragmentation. Do you start seeing this kind of ecosystem fragmentation around AI agents? Because I think go for it.
Yeah, I do. And I see a lot of non-native Web3 kind of AI researchers now dipping their toes in to crypto. And so I do think that there are a lot of different takes on a framework and what agents are coming down the pipeline. And I think there's going to need to be some way for these frameworks or to be a meta framework that aggregates this framework and then is able to then take all the things that we've been working on in Ethereum ecosystem, whether it's privacy preserving tech, whether it's these different protocols, zero knowledge proofs, privacy. So instead of having to re-implement them for each of the frameworks, having like an aggregator framework plug into these, I think the modularity of the world computer is going to be the next step. And you're going to choose, just like as a JavaScript developer, right? You had jQuery back in the day, and then you have like Angular, and then you had React and all of that. You're going to choose your own like framework.
Yes, and developer onboarding will be very relevant, right?
Yeah. And then what does developer onboarding look like in the world of agents? So it's this hybrid developer agent onboarding. So like we have a framework at Collab.Land called the AI Agent Starter Kit, and we assume people are using Cursor or Windsurf. So instead of like a README in our repo, we have a very detailed .cursor rules file, because a lot of the documentation is not for the dev, it's for the agent. So how do you optimize for this hybrid coexistence with developer and agent, like coding together?
That's interesting. So we need to kind of care about AI agent onboarding in our docs too now. But I think this is a big category, and the other big category is all the consumption of the AI agent, right? So how actually a normal human being can be onboarded more efficiently, and how this AI agent can interact with other agents. I think we are on time, but Alex, you have a question. I really like this conversation, and we should definitely have a part 2 here.
You definitely cannot keep James in only into one conversation, and that's my favorite part about him. Yeah, we need to have many more conversations with James.
And we missed all the part on the tamper-proof agents. I definitely want to touch also a little bit on on the fragmentation around frameworks. You touched on the Collab.Land kind of agent start kit, and we definitely need to get a demo of that. So we definitely need to have a part 2 here.
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. This is fun. This is just the beginning. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks so
it.
much.
Cheers,
Man.
James.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
See you guys.